Hi friends, and welcome back to the channel. So if you're new here, my name is Ebony. I'm a furniture artist and I specialize in taking neglected pieces of furniture and turning them into something beautiful. So if you are a returning viewer, you know that this is typically where I show you the end results of my project. However, for today, I'm going to be saving that until the end, so please keep watching because you're definitely not going to want to miss the transformation. So as we jump right into it, you guys know I always start by removing my hardware. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna follow up by cleaning with my TSP substitute. So this particular dresser was given to me from a neighbor. If you watched a couple videos back, I actually included footage of the day that he pulled up and offered to give this to me. So it does come with a nice mirror, and you'll see that a little bit later. And I'm actually really excited about this transformation because I do have a vision in my head already. I already know what colors I want. I kind of know what I'm gonna do with it. I have this dresser trend that I've been following on Instagram, and it's been like showing up everywhere in my feed, so I'm really excited to give it a try for myself. So now that I've removed all of the hardware and all of the drawers, it's time to get cleaning. I'm gonna remove all of the debris and different things that are left behind. It's always interesting to see what you can find. In this particular dresser, there was like a half-eaten Oreo, a Barbie doll head, and just some other random things. So I'm gonna remove that, and then I'm gonna go ahead and follow up by cleaning with my TSP substitute. Okay, so I actually did forget that I'm gonna do one thing before I move on to cleaning, which is oil up these drawer tracks. They're all metal and they're kind of sticking in some areas, so I'm just taking my WD-40 and just wiping that throughout all of the drawer tracks. Okay, so now that that's done, it's time to move on to the next step, which is my Bondo repairs. I typically reach for this type of wood filler because of how hard and durable it dries, and it also dries very quickly. So, but the main difference between this wood filler and like the putty type of wood filler, at least for me, is that this is not stainable. So that's the only thing I've noticed thus far. But this is definitely my preference. So whenever I'm not staining, you'll definitely see me reach for this. This is actually a brand new can because I use it so much. So I had to get a new quart, which is very expensive actually. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and get into the repairs. Okay, so moving right along, I'm going to clean up the hardware because I definitely want to use the same hardware on this dresser. I just want to spray paint it, so I need to give it a good cleaning with my TSP. I'm just going to soak that for about, I think it was about 30 minutes or however long it took me to go outside and do something else in between. So I'm just soaking it in the TSP, and then I'll rinse it off with plain water, and then I'll lightly give it a small sanding with like a fine grit sandpaper, and then I'll give it a good spray. So after I'm done soaking this, I'm gonna head back outside and we're gonna pick up where we left off. So now that my Bondo is dry, I'm ready to move on to my sanding process. And in this case, I just have to scuff sand everything because I'm going to be painting it one solid color, not doing any deep sanding. But I will say you do have to be careful when working with veneer. This is actually not 100% solid wood, and I did struggle in some areas. So you will notice a little bit of bubbling. I think it's on this particular drawer. And yeah, you can only see it from certain angles, but I was really displeased with that. So I am not going to be able to sell this dresser for as much as I would have liked to. But just something to keep in mind if you're ever working with veneer. Just be really careful. I thought I was being careful, and I'm actually only using a 120 grit sandpaper, but yet still I just had some issues. So I'm not too familiar with working with this type of material, and it's actually not my favorite, but just keep that in mind for if ever you work with veneer. So on this day, I'm killing it, if I do say so myself. I'm back in the backyard now, and I'm gonna go ahead and spray paint my hardware. And in order to like adhere it down to something, I just used painter's tape, and I just taped it to a piece of cardboard. So that seems to be working for me. And just remember to do light coats of paint each time that you spray. I think I did 2 or 3 coats, but you definitely don't want to put it on too thick all at one time. Okay, so moving on to the meat of this entire project. I'm doing a texture dresser, and I got this idea over on Instagram, but initially when I saw this, it was done using what's called pole wrap. I had a very hard time finding that in stores, and I didn't want to order it, and it was really expensive, and I only needed a little bit. So as I did more research, I found someone who did this exact method over on YouTube, and I'll try to include her name or link it down below or something just to give credit where credit is due. But when I saw that idea, I fell in love with it. And so what I'm doing is taking these half wooden dowels, and I'm just cutting them down to size. Now on my saw, I have this guardrail thing, so I could just basically clamp it down to the measurements that I need, and I only have to measure once and just cut the rest. So that's what I did. I ended up running out of dowels, so I do have to go back to the store and get 2 more. So I used a total of 5, but really mostly 4 and just a little bit of the 5th pole. But yeah, I had to buy 5 total, and it was about $25 in expenses for the dowels alone. So just keep that in mind if you're gonna do this. That's why I only wanted to do the top 3 drawers, because that would have been outrageously expensive and just not worth my time. Ooh, out of breath, child. Okay, so once I got them all cut to size, I just glued them down using some wood glue. And when I tell you guys, these things are bonded down, I mean, they're not going anywhere. So it was a long process and a little bit tedious at some points, but we got through it. So I just made sure to drill through that hardware hole just to make sure nothing was gonna pop off, and nothing did. So now I can move on to just the fine details. So now I'm just sanding the edges with a 220 grit sandpaper, and then I'm gonna take it in the house and fill in those chipped areas using my wood filler. Okay, so I did get a little carried away with the wood filler. So this is the side that's not done. And then off to the right, I'm gonna show you guys exactly what it's starting to look like as I'm putting that wood filler in. And disclaimer, I know that looks absolutely crazy, but this is what it's gonna look like once I sand it back. I just didn't want any gaps at all whatsoever. So that's why I kind of went in this direction. In hindsight, if I can go back in time, I definitely would not do that, because that took just so much time and it was so frustrating. And keep in mind that I only had 2 drawers done because I still had to go back to the store and get some more dowels for the 3rd drawer. So by the time I got to that last drawer, I was just fed up. I definitely wouldn't do that going forward. It's an optional step completely, but that's what I ended up doing. And in the end, it did look nice. So I was glad about that. But moving right along, now we're gonna move on to primer. I'm using my Zen Bin primer and my Harbor Freight spray gun. It's important to know that that's the combination. Zen Bin primer, Harbor Freight spray gun. Just because the Harbor Freight spray guns are more inexpensive, and just using the Zen Bin primer can be a little, I don't know. I just don't want to put this primer in my good gun. So that's why I use the Harbor Freight gun, and it just kind of gets the job done and does it perfectly for what I need it to do. So keep that in mind. Okay, so before we move on to paint, we're definitely going to take a fine grit sandpaper and just sand down all of that primer, any texture, anything that might be left behind. And for my paint choice for today, I'm using Abingdon Putty. This is by Benjamin Moore in their Command paint. I particularly like this paint because it cures in 24 hours. Cures, not dries, it cures in 24 hours. Return to service, you can fully use it, and that's amazing to me. So going forward, I moved everything into the garage because on this day there were some on and off showers, and I checked the weather. The rain was supposed to have stopped at a certain time. I waited, I think, even 30 minutes to an hour beyond that time, and of course, as soon as I got set up, it started to drizzle. So I wasn't gonna take a chance. I just moved everything into the garage, and of course, the drizzling just stopped. Like nothing else ever fell from the sky from that point forward. But it is what it is. I worked in the garage today. I would rather not have done that just because overspray is a beast, but what's done is done, and I'm loving this color. So that's such a plus. Okay, and here's the mirror that you guys have yet to see all video long. I just didn't record, but it's pretty much the same thing. Clean it, scuff sand it, prime it, and now here I am just painting it. And there's only one more thing we have to do before I can show you guys the final reveal. Okay, and the last step is to line all of my drawers using wrapping paper. So I got the wrapping paper from Hobby Lobby. It was half off, so it was at about $3 or so. And I just bought this spray paint glue, and I'm just going to spray the insides of the drawers, measure the paper down to size, and just go ahead and insert it in the drawers. So the only downfall is that I actually installed the drawers to the drawer tracks before I decided to line them with wrapping paper. So if you get what I'm saying, I don't know if you noticed earlier in the video when I was taking everything apart, I showed a clip of me unscrewing the drawer from the bottom. So basically these drawers are attached to the dresser, and it would have been way too much work to take them apart and unscrew them. So I had to just kind of finesse and make it work. It definitely is not perfect, and I'm really kind of upset about that, but I'm trying to accept my best work as good enough. Things aren't always going to be perfect, and that's okay, but you'll kind of see a couple of clips of it in the end, which is what we're about to get into right now. So if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this transformation. Alright, so thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to check out my last upload. And with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one.